before I start the video today, I just want to quickly answer one question which I get asked all the time. Why do I collect these things? What is so interesting about these pieces of paper? I mean, first of all, it started when I was a kid. I started collecting at 8 years old. I was collecting helmets, bayonets, medals, all these items of equipment that somehow they're exciting in your hand for a few seconds, and then you realise they don't tell really any story, sadly. So I collect IDs because mainly they were there. They were actually in the war. They tell the personal stories of each individual, and they're some of them tragic stories. Some of them are stories of great bravery, and it's really on a personal level then. And of course, piecing together these stories is a real pleasure to do. And of course, a lot of people say, you know, I don't speak German. How can I collect German stuff if I don't really speak any German, especially paperwork? Well, guys, there's a massive community out there collecting this stuff, and believe it or not, there's an English-speaking community, and it seems to be the biggest community collecting these things. Anyway, I collect them because they're mega interesting, and of course, lately they became more and more interesting with the internet. We can research it. It's all easy. People are there to help. Just reach out. So, time to start the video. So, I'm over at the table now, and I would like to show you some of the Soldbuchs and Wehrpasses that I have set up here. Now, of course, in this video, I don't really want to get into what each entry means, where you can find what. Of course, that'll be another video for another day. So, let's start this off with what type of variations. You've noticed I'm wearing gloves. As you can see, I've had this on now for like 10 minutes. My hand's sweating a little, but your hands generally sweat anyway, and it's not good to touch photography and stuff. I mean, if you touch this photograph now and leave it for about 10-15 years, you'll see the fingerprint is sort of burnt into it. So, guys, if you're collecting photographs or Soldbuchs or IDs, be careful. Don't be touching the actual pictures with your hands. So here we have a basic German Army Soldbuch. You'll probably ask why it's such in bad condition. Well, guys, they carry these in their pockets every day. This one seen the whole war in a German soldier's pocket. As you can see here, we have a bit of this swastika left here. You'll probably wonder why some of them have swastikas and why some of them don't have swastikas. Well, a lot of people used these after the war, and to use them after the war, they had to take away, of course, the swastika in the middle. Condition for collectors doesn't really bother a lot of collectors unless it's not missing pages. I mean, some of them are a bit water damaged, like this one. But generally, it's more about the entries and where the Soldbuch has been. This is what's most interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, we collect these because of the stories behind them, not because of the conditions. So that's how it differs really from collecting other things like medals and stuff. Anyway, let me get into this one. I'll have a little skim through. Here we have like promotions. Here's the name. You got some basic information like the gas mask size. Of course, like I said, I'll make another video and go into these in depth. Here you can see when it was issued. For instance, this one was issued in October 1940. Here you can see changes and what pages the changes were put onto. Here we've got the unit pages. Interestingly, this guy served with Feldjäger Battalion 2. These guys were going behind the front lines and catching German soldiers without the correct paperwork or people running away. Of course, you wouldn't have wanted to get caught by one of these guys. They were known as the Kettenhunde, the chained dogs. They would have worn such a gorget around here. Not the nicest guys in the world, I guess, but they had a very strong mandate, actually. So here you can see some kit issue, and of course won't go into all that today. Here we can see some of the weapons and equipment. For instance, a pistol, Zinger model, serial number. Just let me flick on some other bits of equipment. Here we've got a medical page, which is your eyes, and some other medical tests such as x-rays, or if they were able to be used in a tropical environment or not. Here we have the different wounds. For instance, he was wounded a few times. It looks like from a quick look it's twice here he was wounded. And of course, there's different codes. We'll go into the codes later. It might sound a bit daunting already, but once you know basic information about these, you can really base a clear picture and story of the soldier's career. Here we have the security checks. So when he was asked for his paperwork for a security check, stamped and of course signed. Here we've got some payments. The whole point of the Soldbuch was for payment. It sort of evolved into an ID, but started as a payment. And here we can see some extra entries. For instance, he was given a gift. In this case, it's called a Führergeschenk, but the Führergeschenk was normally just a box with some wine or some sort of items like cigarettes or chocolate. There's information on this online also. Here we can see the awards page right at the end somehow. Of course, he ran out of space. And the next medal was put in here. This is the Wounds Badge in silver. Here we've got his leave. It's again not the best condition Soldbuch out there, but a very interesting unit. This is for soap entries. He was given soap. He was trained on just how to throw hand grenades. And it seems that he's used the internal flap of the pouch at the back as a cover. So, anyway, that's the first one that I was going to show you today. This is the Wehrmacht Soldbuch. So, the next Soldbuch I'd like to show you is Kriegsmarine. Here you can see at the bottom, Kriegsmarine. Again, very similar to the Wehrmacht one. Interestingly, these weren't carried on all occasions, but they were kept not far from the original units. Here we can see when it was issued, same sort of story. Of course, there would be no changes here. Of course, in the Navy Soldbuch, the awards pages are at the front rather than at the back for the Wehrmacht. At the back here, we just have other stuff. There's not a lot of entries in this one, but I do want to flick through it that you can see there's a lot of singular entries for types of clothes that you would have been issued. Yeah, we can see also from here some other pieces of clothing what he was issued. And Kriegsmarine Soldbuchs are a bit of a puzzle. You have to really follow the field post numbers, which I will explain in another day. It's not that easy to decipher these compared to the Wehrpass or the normal Soldbuch. Here we have, for instance, he was issued a K98 rifle with a serial number on that date by what unit. Again, that's his field post number you see there. Let me flick through. What else have we got? Yeah, interesting story about this guy. I'll tell you at the end as I flick through. I just wanted to show you the different formats. Here we got some payments and from where and from who. And here again the field post numbers. And there's not many entries in the back of this. But of course, we have his little pouch is intact here. And here you can see who actually printed this book, which is Metten and Co. in Berlin. Anyway, the story, a quick overview of the story of this guy. He was on a minesweeper and ended up, actually his boat crashed into an island in the Adriatic Sea. He was found a few days later. I guess it wouldn't have been a nice experience because most of the crew were reported as being captured by partisans actually. But he had made it to Italy somehow and was in a military hospital in, I think it was Naples. You can see, like I said in the first video, many of these were destroyed during the war and they had to reissue them. And this is exactly an example of that. This is a Zweitschrift, meaning in German, zwei, second Schrift, second writing, or the second edition of this one. Again, these are a pretty nice example to show you. You can see his medals. He's got the blockade breaker and the Iron Cross second class. That's just a quick overview of the story and a quick overview of the Kriegsmarine Soldbuch. Next up we have the Air Force, the Luftwaffe version, which is a blue color. As you can see, it's a light blue. Of course, all these colors would have changed throughout the war because as the printers changed and as materials changed throughout the war, the colors never really stayed the same on them all. but they're staying similar, of course. Here we can see the eagles are different. We have the Air Force eagle here as opposed to the Army or Navy eagle, different eagle. Let me flip through this one. Quick story about this guy. He actually was a BF-109 pilot who was shot down late war. He survived the crash, lost his left arm, but still a very interesting story behind this guy. Here we can see on this Air Force Soldbuch, for instance, we have the 10 rules of a German soldier. That makes another nice video. We can go into that later. Here we can see, for instance, Fliegendes Personal. It's not on all flying personnel, but some of the flying personnel will have this stamp or it handwritten here. As you can see, it's also handwritten. As you can see here, the front page is a little loose. Obviously separated and folded at one stage. Not too sure why that is, but I've seen that quite often on certain Soldbuchs where the front page was loose. Here we have the units. Of course, the units here are different on the Luftwaffe Soldbuch because the section here is called B, and it is all the frontline units or training units that he was with mixed together. Interestingly, training through 41 right through to late 43 whenever he was assigned to a actual fighter pilot unit. Here we can see his next to kin is his Eltern, meaning parents. In this case, it's his father, William. His eyes are perfect, no marks. But here we can see he can be used for tropical service here at the bottom, Tropendienstfähig. Here again, we've got the wound codes, which we'll get into in another day. And of course, here we have all his issued equipment throughout his career. Interesting in this one, as far as I could remember, yes, it had the channel coat and the channel trousers, famous for pilots. Here we have his mask that was issued to him. As we can see here, it's a Zerstörermaske, a destroyer mask. This was, of course, as it was given out, recorded how many pieces were given to him and what size. Most aircrew will have this entered in both the Soldbuch and the Wehrpass. They kept a good record of the type of flying helmet because I'm sure it was expensive back in the day. Here we can see winter or summer or with net. On this side we have his injections. Here we can see that he was able to be a pilot. Actually, he was found fit to be a pilot. And he could be used with a parachute. Of course, you don't want somebody jumping out of a plane who is not fit to use a parachute. Here we can see his last unit. This is the spillover page, and it's the 12th Staffel with Jagdgeschwader 4. That's who he was shot down with. On the same day, interestingly, 4 other pilots were shot down and the other ones were killed, but he survived. Here's the pay group. Here we can see some extra stuff like Rasierseife, shaving foam. It gets down to the next page, which is a spillover page again. In this case, it's Auszeichnungen, meaning awards. And as you can see here, it's the silver wounds badge, likely for losing his arm. Here we have medals and other types of awards. He had a pilot's badge. Here you can see Flugzeugführerabzeichen, so he could fly an aircraft. Above it we have the glider pilot's license. Here are the wounds badge in black. Some holidays he went on. Some of them are quite interesting actually in the terms of Grund. I mean, I can flick back and show you. Here it's just Erholung, so just for general holiday time, but sometimes it'll change from Einsatz, or if they had had damaged houses, or if their family, for instance, were killed, they were given a bit of leave. Here we have in the back of this Soldbuch, which seems to be a Merkblatt meaning like an attention, pay attention to this information, and it should be held in the back of the Soldbuch. You can read here at the top, "Zu die Tasche des Soldbuches einlegen," to put it into the Tasche, the pocket at the back of the Soldbuch. This one is for Kampfstoff, so different types of chemical warfare, just in case it was used, and if it got on in your lungs or on your skin or on your uniform, what to do in those cases. Here we have, for instance, quite an odd one actually, for whenever you went on holidays, what the rules were about money and whatnot. And this one was quite interesting, given out in August 42, what to do in the case of Kälteschaden, like damages through cold, like freezing or stuff like this. Like if you had cold feet or frozen feet, what to do and how to really prevent this, and what help to seek in what cases. And here we have again a soap issue whenever he was training. Of course, then you have this Bestimmung, which is like what they should do with the Soldbuch on the back cover, as opposed to the inside cover as on the other ones. Just small details to note. Anyway, with pilots, usually the Soldbuch doesn't really come alone. Normally you would have other things. In this case, we have his, when he was in the Hitler Youth, actually, he was flying with the National Sozialistisches Fliegerkorps. And as you can see here, there's a picture of him when he was pretty much a kid in this case. But he had loads of flying hours on various gliders. As you can see, nice complete book. This is a Flugbuch, a flying book, so keeping a record of his flights. This is some of his post-war stuff. He had some images as he was in the Hitler Youth, as he was a glider training. Some interesting photos actually. And of course his pilot's license after the war. Interestingly, this guy was flying right up to 93, I think the last entry was 1993. This is the most interesting one. This is the pilot's license for the German Air Force. It's a waterproof paper, as you can see. Again, another nice photograph in this one. What do we have in here? It actually shows you the type of aircraft that he's allowed to fly. So in this case, the MCC-202 was actually an Italian fighter plane. What else do we have in here? Oh, we can see BF-108, BF-109 versions D, E, and G. So he could fly the different versions of the Messerschmitt 109. And then of course it'll tell you the school that he obtained the license with. And generally they're not always full, but they have of course the basic aircraft. Anyway, that is an overview of the Luftwaffe version of the Soldbuch and some other items that you're likely to find with a pilot. This, of course, is a nice example of it with quite a large story, actually, which I've wrote and have it on my website. Anyway, let's move on. So the next in line is the SS Soldbuch. This is the only one I have out of the safe at the minute, so this one's going to have to do it. On the cover, you'll expect to see the SS runes instead of the eagle and the swastika. And of course, then it has Zugleich Personalausweis, the same as what's wrote underneath all of them. It doesn't have Waffen SS, again, it just has the two Blitz along here. What I can tell about this one is this is a cover that he self-made. There was, back in the day, the possibility to buy certain types of cover, like early plastics that you could see through and whatnot. Are these common to find like this? Not so common. This is probably the most elaborate and best made cover. He's literally just put it through a sewing machine. But it's a good example to show you guys today, an SS Soldbuch. SS Soldbuchs are in high demand nowadays. There is very limited supply of these. Not every dealer is able to sell them because they just aren't out there. You just can't find them anymore. So here we can see on the top, maybe you can make it out underneath, you can see here the SS rune. So SS Soldbuch, it starts off. As you can see on this one, it's a Zweitschrift, it's a second edition. Likely why he made a cover is because he damaged or lost the other one. Interesting point to note here on this is you can see this strange number along here. Now, a lot of people will probably wonder why their Solt books are showing such numbers starting with G31. Well, this means that he was a German captured in the European theatre of operation. So he was captured by the Americans. This is an American type of prisoner of war number. And as you can see, the German abbreviation, Kriegsgefangene Nummer. And of course, I'll tell you a little bit about him. So he won a few awards very early in the war. He was a very early member of the Waffen-SS. As far as I remember from my memory, he was one of the early members from 1934 in the Leibstandarte, which was Hitler's bodyguard unit. This second edition, which was issued later on in the war, as you can see, he was already an SS Unterscharführer and an NCO. And you can just about make out the LAH, the Leibstandarte cipher on the shoulder board. Anyway, nice example, nice stamps. And I'll just flick through it to give you an idea, of course, what to expect in an SS Solt book. This one's been water damaged. As you can see, it's a little bit hard to read all of them, but he's got, for instance, a change in his rank here in 1943, and the unit is Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, the bodyguard unit of Adolf Hitler. Ended up later on, as you can see here, this is the frontline section. Feldtruppenteil, the field unit. Above it, Ersatztruppenteil, which is the replacement unit or training unit that he would have been with. Later on in the war, he's sent to a very strange unit, actually, with a strange designation. And they were mainly supplying and testing different devices. You can see here he was a Berliner. And obviously the house was destroyed at one time because you can see the lines through it saying that he moved house. His wife, actually, Lotte. Not so many entries in here, but this is a good example of an SS Solt book. I can flip through. Of course, here we have again some entries for injections. Nothing with the eyes. A good few security stamps, even a security stamp post-war. This guy actually was used post-war after he was captured. The pay group again, his pay group, in this case it's 12. And here we have his awards page. So what sort of awards does this guy have? He has the medal for the annexation of Austria and the medal for taking Czechoslovakia. Underneath we can see here Iron Cross second class, Iron Cross first class. So he was quite highly awarded quite early on. Later on he ended up winning the Kriegsverdienstkreuz Zweite Klasse mit Schwerten. So it's the War Merit Cross second class with swords. Here we can see, interestingly, he's tried to hide the field post number, which you can still make out, which is 56205. So he wasn't too successful at destroying the field post number. A lot of these units tried to hide what units they were in, or where they were, or what movements they were involved in. Sorry. Here we can see something interesting in the back. Dachau. Interesting. Why was he there? He was actually a prisoner of war in Dachau. A lot of the Leibstandarte SS guys ended up there. And here we can see he was resettled in the US zone. So this is a post-war photograph of him and his fingerprint. What else do we have in here? A driver's license. This isn't the standard German army one, but it's a post-war one. So this is an example, of course, of an ID that was used post-war also. He kept his little pouch, again with his home address in here, and what seems to be the field post number that he tried to hide on the award. He didn't hide here. As you can see, this rather rudimental and crude cover that was made for it. I won't try and disturb it too much, but it's just from a normal material that he would have had. Anyway, SS Soldbuch, that's a good example of it for you today. Again, this guy was captured by the Americans, and this one has a nice picture. Here we have some other IDs that were carried by certain types of German personnel during World War II. This one is the service book for Organisation Todt, which of course was the building organisation that built like the West Wall and whatnot. They didn't have a good reputation. They were using a lot of slave labour and whatnot too, but this is an example of one of the personnel's books. You can see he's in uniform in this picture. Of course, it has the basic details, where they were used, the Einsatzgebiet. In this guy's case, he was used at Le Havre in France at the port, at the Hafengebiet, and also in Belgium. Here we have, for instance, a bit of a more detailed description of what they were doing there. In this guy's case, he was a crane driver. Not very often you see many entries in these, and when you do, they're normally highly sought after. What do we have in here? What type of clothes? Don't know why they didn't enter his uniform in this case. What else do we have in here? Some rules of the worker, and we don't have any leave on this one. And some of the rules of carrying this book. Anyway, it's just a small example to show you what to expect, what you'll find on the market nowadays. On this one we have not the best example. It's a bit tatty, but again, these were carried in the pockets. This one is an RAD ID, so construction again, Reichsarbeitsdienst. This is actually quite a nice example, because this guy actually was fighting also, not just building. Later on in the war they were used for all sorts of stuff. This guy was actually in a flak unit towards the end of the war in 1945. Let's go back. What to expect again on the front page. Of course, you've got the basic information, where they were from, dates of birth. Here you've got like more personal details, like what their build was, etc. Here we have the rank. As you can see, he's worked his way up Unterfeldmeister, which was an NCO, and then of course what units he was serving with. You can see here it would match the badge on their arm. Right here, this was the bit I wanted to show you guys. So this guy was used right the way through, not only building and constructing and whatnot, but then of course put in into service already from 1942. You can see that he was serving in the rear of the front line, and then later on he was used as you can see down in here, some flak, different flak units. Heavy flak, Schwere flak. I was unable to find out where exactly they were, but they were serving in Eastern Prussia, modern Poland, towards the end of the war. I don't know this guy's fate, but just wanted to show you it as an example today. And here you could use a weapon, for instance. Again, trained against spies and how to look out for that sort of stuff. Here again that he could use a weapon. And of course he has some medals, the SA Sports Badge, the service medals, the West Wall medal. Again, the West Wall, quite an interesting fortification, went the whole way across the west. Here we have, for instance, that he has a PPK Walther serial number, so he was armed. Then we've got, just like in the Soldbuch, the left and right eye. And here a wound code, or a sickness code. This is about his teeth. For instance, he had some issue with his teeth here. And then again we have along the top here the different types of uniform pieces that he would have been issued. Just a small example, Schirmmütze, peaked cap. And these are payments. Interesting, here at the back, for instance, we have another entry which is for an FN pistol with a caliber of 7.65mm. And then that's it, pretty much. This is a nice example because most of these that you'll find on the market nowadays didn't fight or carry a weapon or whatnot. But this guy was actually on the front line, I'd say, towards the later part of the war, 1945, whenever those units got pretty much rolled over. I could imagine he was used then on the front line because, I mean, the flak units had to fight on the ground as well whenever the enemy advanced. So just another interesting identification paper. And this one, for instance, had also a nice photo in it. So that's it. That's a wrap. That's the sort of IDs that you could expect to find on German personnel during the Second World War. I hope you guys enjoyed this little overview of what to look out for as a collector. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. You can send me a message. Thanks, guys. Come on over and join us. There's 1,700 members on there. A decent admin team, loads of knowledge collectively among the members and the admins. It's pretty easy to find if you type into the search function on Facebook, Soldbuch, Wehrpass and Documents Research Group. It'll come up under the groups section. If I was to scroll down here, you'll see the only thing we really need to abide by is the fact that all symbols have to be covered up on Facebook. They don't have any offensive symbols, as they call it. So all posts are approved. That's it from me, and I hope I can bring you some value in the next video. Thanks.